Welcome in today as we are on our journey heading down to the west central part of Georgia on the southwestern part of the Piedmont. As we're going to be heading down to Warm Springs to see the springs and learn more about the history of that area and the Warm Springs Foundation. So come along with us as we head on down the road. We have arrived at our destination. We are here at the Roosevelt Warm Springs campus. These springs on this site are very historical, along with this center. This center has been here almost 100 years now and still continues to serve a purpose for rehabilitation for people who have disabilities. There are at least 7 different groups of warm springs known in Georgia. But the best known ones is a group of springs that emerge just north of Pine Mountain. These springs are located near the city of Warm Springs, Georgia, which is in the southwestern Georgia Piedmont region. The Warm Springs area is a gently rolling upland on the Greenville Plateau of the southern Piedmont physiographic region of Georgia. From this plateau rise 2 prominent landscape features, Pine Mountain and Oak Mountain. The summit of Pine Mountain is an area known as Dowdell Knob at about 1,400 feet, which is more than 600 feet higher than the general land formation in and around Warm Springs. The city of Warm Springs sits on the watershed divide separating the Chattahoochee on the west and the Flint River drainage on the right. The Native Americans, like the Creeks, knew of the springs and their mystical healing powers in the early years, likely well before the English began colonizing Georgia. The warm mineral waters were used by the Native Americans to speed the healing of their wounds. Also, the Native Americans used these warm springs not only as healing for their wounded, as I stated, but also for their sick. In 1832, a Mr. David Rose, a local entrepreneur of this area, built the first resort on the site of Warm Springs. His resort prospered until about 1865 when it was destroyed by fire. The springs continue to be utilized by local citizens and those who knew of the springs until the turn of the century. Finally, Warm Springs gained national attention in 1924 when future President Franklin Delano Roosevelt came here to swim in those warm natural mineral spring waters. In 1926, Roosevelt bought the pools, the springs, and 1,100 acres of land around them. He spent 2/3 of his own personal money to create the world's first post-polio treatment center, the Georgia Warm Springs Foundation. Roosevelt was elected president in 1932. This facilitated additional fundraising efforts for the foundation. That pioneering work also led to alleviate the debilitating efforts of polio expanded in 1938 when Roosevelt created the March of Dimes to unify a national effort to eradicate the diseases dealing with the muscles. We are here at the Warm Springs Treatment Pool's historical marker, the actual site where the spring flowed up out of the ground. You see here it says, Georgia's largest and most famous warm spring delivered 914 gallons of water at 88 degrees Fahrenheit per minute to a catch basin beneath the building at the base of the hill in front of you. The springs have been used for recreation and healing for centuries. Franklin Delano Roosevelt came here in 1924 in hopes to recover from the effects of polio. He came to believe in the therapeutic benefits of the springs and brought a declining Victorian resort that had grown around the springs. For the next 21 years, he invested much time and money in the making of Warm Springs, a major polio treatment center. After the Georgia Warm Springs Foundation was founded, the pools area was transformed into a hydrotherapeutic treatment center designed by the architect Henry Toombs. Those are the public pools behind us here that were open to the public until the 1960s, at which time they were closed. These are the very same pools that our 32nd President of the United States swam in and rehabilitated his legs in. Those springs today are no longer available to the public and unfortunately can only be seen in pictures and what little bit we saw over there on the side. Warm Springs gained national attention in 1924 when they were visited by the future President of the United States, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He found the waters beneficial after his attack of polio. In 1921, Roosevelt was stricken with polio and found the warm 88-degree waters, mineral waters, of the springs to be uplifting to him. Swimming in the warm mineral waters provided no miracle cure, however. It did allow Roosevelt the mental strength to re-enter the political world and his successful run for governor of New York and eventually President of our United States of America. Roosevelt came to Warm Springs in 1924 in the hopes of recovering from the effects of polio. His love for the area and hopes for the Georgia Warm Springs Foundation led him to build a small white clapboard cottage on these pine-scented slopes. The house was completed in 1932 while FDR was actually served as governor of New York. But after he became the 32nd President of the United States, this cottage became known as the Little White House. As I stand here today beside the bust of our 32nd President of our United States, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, best known as FDR, I am reminded of his many humanitarian efforts that he gave us as private citizens through his efforts and his works through the Warm Springs Foundation. He purchased these 1,100 acres here at Warm Springs to help himself as well as others and dedicated his life to that. The Warm Springs Foundation, which is now run by the Roosevelt Rehabilitation Health Services, is still in operation even today, where they continue to do the good deeds to help those folks who have handicaps that need rehabilitation. The Roosevelt Warm Springs Institute for Rehabilitation is now located on the site where the springs and pools were and are still located. You may stop by Georgia Hall here and pick up one of the Roosevelt Warm Springs self-guided walking tour brochures. Inside you will find information about Warm Springs, the foundation, the pools, and the Little White House. So again, stop by this visitor center here at the Georgia Hall, pick up a brochure here at the Roosevelt Warm Springs Institute for Rehabilitation. We have come to the ending of our summer activity journey to see and hear about the 7 natural wonders in Georgia. We are here at Radium Springs, located on the east side of the Flint River. down in southwest Georgia near the city of Albany. This spring has been known for centuries, from the early Native Americans to the first written recording of the springs by Hernando Cortez in 1540. And still today, the spring is active. Radium Springs pumps out about 70,000 gallons of clear blue water per minute at a constant 68 degrees of temperature. In 1925, a developer found that this spring contained the radioactive element radium. He bought the land on which the spring was located and built a resort and changed the name from Blue Springs to Radium Springs after this element. The element radium gave those waters its blue color. The resort is long gone, but some of the structures still exist, and of course, the spring is still flowing those natural blue waters. You can't swim in these waters anymore, but you can visit them today at a local park in Albany, Georgia, called Radium Springs. I would like to thank all that have shared in our summer journey activities. I hope we have stirred your interest to continue to go out and see the great natural sights in our great state of Georgia. Don't forget to click on the link and respond to the few questions from today's journey in order to receive your points for today's summer activity. Stay tuned into our websites for possible future journeys across our state of Georgia. Until then, we ask you to go out and make the best better, as our 4-H motto says.